Hello, everyone. A happy Thursday to all of you, and welcome to our FAMS background check process demo for regulators. We're thrilled that you could join us this afternoon. Before I pass it off to Patty and then Melissa, I do have a couple of brief housekeeping items before we get started. First and foremost, lines are muted during our webinar today. This just allows for greater quiet on the training. But we do welcome questions. If you have any questions, pop those into the Q&A box. If you don't see the Q&A box, you're going to go to the bottom right of your WebEx panel. You might see a question mark. If you don't see that, you'll click on the three dots, the ellipse, click that, and that will open up the Q&A box. Pop your questions in there, and we'll answer them as we go along. Last but not least, today's presentation is being recorded and will be shared out with you. All right, I am going to go ahead and click the record button to make myself honest here. Let's see, we'll hit the record. Oh, we're already recording, so we are good to go. Next, I'm going to pass it off to Patty, I believe, to get us started.
Welcome everybody this afternoon to our demonstration of the new CBC FAMS people pages that's going to roll out in the next few weeks. We don't have an exact date yet, but we are working to button up everything and get it ready to go. Piper, Jim can't get into the webinar. Can
I
you?
just saw that, Patty. I'm
Thank you.
going to send him a link. Not to worry, I've got him covered.
Great, thanks. So we're very excited about this. We think it'll streamline the process for everybody. And there's Melissa's going to do a great job going through screen by screen by screen. Certainly pop up your questions, but know that she's going to cover it all. And we think it's going to streamline everything. There's going to be automated system generated letters now that will go to providers. So no more printing and mailing. Hopefully it'll cut down on a lot of the back and forth. We are initial applications will still be coming in and being processed the same way, it's 6,000 packets, but we are hoping that we can really encourage providers to use this system. And we're going to provide a lot of support and a lot of training around it. We're doing several provider sessions, and we're going to have lots of stuff up on the website for them. So I'm going to pass it off to Melissa because I know she's got a lot of stuff to cover in a short period of time, but we'll answer any questions that come up. Thanks.
Thank you, Patty, and thank you everybody for taking your time today to listen in to this webinar. Our hope today, honestly, is I know that many of you were able to see the and listen in the last week or so when we had the informative sessions, and you all had tons and tons of questions. So our hope today is that you leave this demo with a better understanding of what you're going to be seeing when this goes live, and also an understanding of how this all will roll out. So what I'm showing you right now is FAMS, and I'm logged in as a particular provider. But before we go into a lot of details about what they'll see in FAMS, I want to just start also with explaining to you how this will roll out and how the provider community will hear about it. Obviously, when this happens, we will send some mass emails to all of you as the regulator community so that you know that it is live. And at that same time, we're going to send out some FAMS emails to 3 different groups of people. The first group is going to be anyone who currently has a FAMS account. We're going to send out this email that's generic for everybody that talks about this great new opportunity, what they're going to be able to do, and the highlights of what they'll be able to do now through FAMS. I will walk you through each one of these bullets as we actually demo it together. But they also will share in this email their username and also the URL to get into FAMS. So even if I'm someone who maybe registered my FACS program 3 years ago and I have no memory of what my username was, they will still get this email and they will then be able to use that username, get to that my.gov, and if they don't remember their password, they can reset that as well. The other group of people that will get an email very similar are to those same facilities that have currently a FAMS account holder. They will also get an email. It's going to go to the site email and also the current director and the current on-site provider, obviously depending on your modality. They'll get the same message about what the program's about, and it will also have this last paragraph that says your FAMS account owner has been informed and that If the person no longer works there and they want to access FAMS, that they need to contact you, their regulator, to request a new invite be sent out. Then once they complete that registration, then that they'll also need to ask you to make them the account holder. I'm going to show you how to do that. That's all available for you to be able to do yourself through the FAMS facility administration page, and I'm going to demo that for you as well so that you're very clear on how to do that. The last group of people, it's going to go to anybody that currently does not have a FAMS account. Again, all the same information about it, but for these people, we're going to say for your facility ID, whatever that is, and we're going to provide this unique token that will basically link them based on who they are in their email, and this goes out to that site and also director or on-site provider, depending on the modality. They will need to use this token in order to register. It's really important in case you get questions that we don't want them to take this email and forward it to, you know, another person they know who has a program down the road from them because maybe they didn't get an email. If they forward this to someone else and someone else uses this token, that person actually will get linked to their facility. It will clearly not go to the facility that person's trying to log in as. So that's an important part. Don't share this link with someone else. If they don't have an email, an invitation, we'll show you also what they can do, what you can do to help them in getting that. So those are the letters we're going to send out. Now let's go back to the FAMS page, and I'm signed in as Lynn, again, the account holder. Just to note that this is obviously all in a test environment, so anything I demo for you today, there's no concern about any changes I make. You'll notice already that this is new in case you're in FAMS before. We're going to talk about those in just a minute, but before we do that, I want to go to this facility administration page and really show you how, in case you get those questions, that let's say that scenario that we just talked about, that someone reaches out to you and says, you know, my account holder no longer works here, I want to be invited. All you'd need to do is come here, and this also would be available. You see I'm signed in as Lynn. This same functionality would be available to the account holder to do as well. But if they said, I would like to have someone else invited, they can just go to here to add new user, and let's say that they want to send it to George Lopez, and his email is George@gmail, and then whatever role they want to give him, delegate or user. I'm going to, in this case, say delegate, just and not to get into tons of details about this particular process, but basically you can have one account holder, but you can have many delegates. You know, our hope is with this program that more and more people will want to use FAMS to be able to do their background checks as well as upcoming renewals and their program maintenance and all the other functionality that they're able to do in FAMS. So as many people as they want to have as delegates, they certainly can. And then from there, I'm just going to show you, if I go back here to my emails, there would be an invitation that was sent to George Lopez that tells him how he can register. It will also have that unique token that then he can go in and create an invite account for himself and be able to register. And it will link them to that facility that Lynn was just inviting him to, or that you were inviting him to.
And can I
And
just
then,
say, Melissa, as
sure,
delegate, you know, so they're going to be emailing the regulator to ask to add the permissions for this person to be delegate. And as regulators, you might, you know, if they've got a lot of them, you might want to question some of that. I mean, just because they'll have access to applications, their background checks, the results of CBCs, not the actual background checks. But so you may want to kind of, as the regulator, just verify that this is somebody that should be in there doing this stuff.
good point, Patty. And then the next part here would be if for some reason they said that account holder no longer works there, now that you've sent a new invite and that person is registered, they'll show up in the user. You could go ahead and say, I want to give Sally McCleary, who's one of the delegates, and make her the account holder. I'm not going to do that right now because I want to use Lynn's account as I'm doing this testing. But if you did that, you also would be able to go into the next part, which would be to say that you want to revoke someone's access. So if there is someone that no longer works there, you can come to this revoke or reinstate access to that facility. And again, you can do that as well as the account holder for that particular facility can do that. And then one other thing I want to show you, because you might also get people who say, well, I lost my invite, or my invite expired. You went to another drop-down that says Manage Pending Invitations. There would be, if this is somebody who's never had an invitation yet for FAMS that they've accepted, there should be, if I wasn't airing here, let's see if I can refresh that and see if I can get that to work again. Well, it's not working, so. But there would be a place here, if it was working, and I went to Manage Invitations, it would show you the invitations that were there. I think there's one here, actually, too, I could show you, hopefully, where you'd be able to go in and say reissue, and it would send another invitation to them. That doesn't seem to be working. So let's move on to the good stuff, which is the background checks, and that's really what you're here to talk about. So you'll see off of the drop-down, there's two options, the staff list and the request a waiver. Let's do the request a waiver first. The request a waiver is basically taking the place of that hard copy process that you're used to getting right now of some sort of form that the provider sends to you that says, I want you to waive in this person that either has just a fingerprint or they also maybe are already CBC approved and they've worked somewhere else in childcare. They could come here to this particular page and type in that I want to waive Melissa McCleary. They would need to know what their date of birth is, and then tell you hopefully the facility ID and name that where they worked at before. If you're not sure about that or they're not sure about that, you can search the public website on the child care search to be able to find that information, and then to tell what sort of role that they're wanting to be waived for, and then the facility that they want to be waived for. So obviously I'm Lynn and I'm working at this facility, so I want to, in this case, waive to this YMCA, which is in Greenbush. And then they just click Add Facility, and it shows about down here on this table. They could edit it, they can delete it, but they also can add multiple. They don't need to do just one at a time. They could say that Melissa also needs to be waived into the YMCA in Albany. Add her. She also needs to be added to the YMCA in Troy, or maybe the YMCA in Saratoga. And if they look at that list before they send it, if they see there's something they need to edit or delete, they could delete this and say, no, she's not going to be working in Troy. And then when they save on the page, they'll get a message that says a waiver request has been sent to your regulator. Once the fingerprints have been matched, you'll see this staff member on your staff list, and you'll be able to enter the 6,000 packet. So let me show you what you as a regulator will get. You will get an email that's going to be coming from that pop.gov account. And in this case, I'm logged into a facility in East Greenbush. So it's Sherry is the actual regulator. So she gets that email, and it'll tell her that the waiver request, who it came from, that it was Lynn and the facility she worked at, who they're wanting to waive, their date of birth, previous facilities, and then any facility that they want to waive them into. This whole process then, the next steps would be for you to go through and search for that person in your people search and then match the fingerprints. I'm not going to go through that process because I know that's something you guys do a lot with waivers, but again, this would be a way for them to be able to come here to request a waiver, send it to you electronically, you get an email, and then when you match those fingerprints, they'll show up on their staff list. So let's go there next. I'm back in FAMS, on background checks, I'm clicking on staff list. And again, I'm logged in as the provider right now. And what they will now be able to see is their staff list, very similar to what you're used to seeing now in CCS2. So it will look very familiar to you. But let me try to explain some of what you're seeing. They're going to be able to sort and filter on the person's name, on the role, or also on the clearance. And in particular, we found as we were kind of reviewing this and testing this with others, is that especially if you're in a large staff program, maybe you have 200 employees, you don't want to have to scroll down a big list of people who are already approved. You may want to just look for those that say they're initiated fingerprint or under review or something like that, so they know the ones to try to look at first. But what you're seeing in this whole page, Also is only active staff. So you see that this is already checked. That's what we default to, so that we're only showing them the shorter list of people that currently within CCS2, if you looked at this same facility, you would see all of these staff as being active staff. And as most of you know, most of those people mean that they've been fingerprinted. But if they wanted to see people who've been expunged or inactive, they could on-click this, and it would show a much larger list that they could then look at those folks as well. But the goal with this is now to give them the ability to be able to better manage their staff list so that they don't have to come to you each time when they have some changes. So let's go through some of what they're seeing. They see their staff name, and if I clicked on this staff name for Taylor for their director, it's going to give me all the information that you're used to seeing. So let me just do that real quickly. Within their CBC pages in CCS2, you'll see all of their 6,000 packet information. And we're going to go through each one of those tabs in just a minute as we add somebody and go through the clearance process for them. But then obviously the roles, their birth, the status, their fingerprint date, and then their clearance. And I want to show you that because a lot of these clearance statuses, there's so many of them, as you know, and people don't necessarily know what some of them mean. They all have a hover text over it that would show them that this status means, and in this case, obviously it's approved. That one's pretty clear, but it just means that the CBC process is complete. If I was looking at one that wasn't an approved one, so if I look down here for like initiated fingerprint, this shows you the status indicates that only a fingerprint has been received. Important thing to note here, this approved one, you'll also see that says there's some sort of outstanding requirements. For the initiated fingerprint, if I click on it, you're going to see those same rules that you're used to seeing in CCS2, that were basically, this is still what needs to happen in order to process their CBC requirement decision. So obviously from a provider perspective, the key point is that we still need their 6,000 packet, and that's why they're sitting there with the status of initiated fingerprint. But you may wonder, well, Stephen Chappell, why is he approved, but yet he has outstanding requirements? What that really is that somebody was waived in, and they still need to have their SCR and SEL. So hopefully that will help also remind the provider community as they look at this. If they waive in somebody who's already approved, and we know they now need another SCR, SEL clearance for that facility, that they'll be reminded that that's another step that they need to complete. The next column for days remaining is something that hopefully will be very helpful as, and I'm just going to get the full list here so you can see that. As we get closer to the 5-year period when people will need to be CBC cleared again. As you know, the fingerprint date is what drives when they need to be cleared again. And as long as there's been no break in service, it will be 5 years from that last fingerprint date that they would need to start the clearance process again, go get new fingerprints, give us a new 6,000 packet, and get cleared again. This countdown will help them that they'll be able to look at their dashboard and be able to filter it by, you know, the most outstanding and see this person's coming most due and others that have more time. They're also, just to kind of throw out here at this point, there is a coming due letter that they'll get also 180 days ahead of time. But that's what the days outstanding stands for. You'll see the initiated fingerprint, it still says 0, and that's because we haven't even started the process for them yet, so there is no clock for the actual approval process. And then the thing is that Patty talked about, the great point here is that you'll see there's a column for clearance letters. So now they will be able to, you're not going to have to generate any of these letters. They will auto-generate and be posted for the provider. I'll show you in a minute an example of that and how they're going to get a message about that. But the provider can come here and click on, you know, they want to see what Taylor's letter was. They'll be able to open it, view that, and when they do that, it also will give us an update about when it was read and by who it was read by. So you as a regulator, if you wanted to log in and look at their staff list, you'd be able to tell whether the letters for their CDC have been read or not. The other thing is this remove from the staff list, and this is something which will be the first time that we're kind of giving people the opportunity to do this, but again, as part of managing their caseload, their own staff list, they're going to be able to click on this end date. So if they did not, they said Colton doesn't work here any longer, they can click on end date. And it's basically going to pull a window that's very similar to what you're looking at in CCS2 for their roles window. And they'll be able to come in here and say, Colton doesn't work here any longer. He stopped working there on April the 3rd. It's going to pop a message that says, are you sure you want to remove this person from the staff list? Once removed, only your regulator can reactivate this person. And they're going to, in this case, I'm going to demo you to say, yes, let's remove it. And when I save on the page, you'll see that now Colton is going to go and his CBC status also is going to change to approved and active. So he was approved, but he's now has an active role, no active roles. And I'll show you in a minute when we go back to CCS2 that there is information that you'll see that's a to-do that tells you that somebody has been end dated and that they also would need to be expunged. But the expungement part of it is still on the regulator side. I want to point out a couple things on this page that are important. One is that we don't allow them to add roles. That is something that you guys are still responsible for. But we do allow them to basically request a role. So even in this case, let's say they expunged Colton and they're like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. I shouldn't say expunged. They made him inactive and they didn't mean to do that. They could come in here and say, I was wrong in that. He really should be reactivated. They're going to request it, and then you'll get an email on that as well. And I'm going to show you that later. But in this case, the other thing I want to point out is that the only roles that can be end dated are what we call non-key roles. So you'll see these highlighted here. They can't come in and end date a director or an on-site provider or the sole proprietor, because those are roles that, as you know, have a lot of other implications based on the license or the registration. So any of those, if they wanted to end date, we still need to follow that same process that you have right now, where they would reach out to you and let you know that they no longer work there or they want to change their director, and that same process could occur. So let me go back to staff list, and I've basically shown you all of what's on here. The only thing I want to show real quickly is, because we're going to go the path of actually taking someone who's already been fingerprinted, but if someone does have a 6,000 packet and they don't want to wait until they get fingerprinted, they can come here and basically add that person, just like you can right now in CBS2. We ask them first, are you sure they're not cleared somewhere else and they haven't been fingerprinted? But if they say no, then they would be able to answer all the 6,000 packet information and then be able to say that they had it. But that path I'm not going to walk you through. We're going to, in the essence of time, we're going to go back and look at someone who already right now is initiated fingerprint. So let's take Olivia's case, and we're going to click on her name, and you'll see since she's only fingerprinted, we don't show you all of those other tabs that we will eventually show you once we know that we have a 6,000 packet for them. So the other thing that's new with this release is that, and this is something that happens in an offline process right now, but now we're going to be able to track it in the system. Currently, what the reg says is that if I am an employee at a center and I have been fingerprinted, as long as my facility has a medical form for me, then I can work provisionally in childcare, and as long as I'm supervised by someone who has also been CBC cleared. So I'm going to put in here that Olivia has shared a medical form with their provider, which is Lynn, who is the one who's putting this information in. Lynn is saying, yes, I have that, and that Olivia, the document I have supports that that Olivia can work in childcare. We've put in the date that the physical or medical form was signed or completed, and then they've uploaded that form. At the save of the page, it's going to now create a new CBC status, and that CBC status is provisional approval. So that is something we've never had before, but now we're going to be able to track people who are at the facility working, who have a fingerprint and only a medical. As I go back to the staff list and we look for Olivia again, you're going to see that we generated a letter. But I want to show you one other kind of, I think, hopefully a helpful thing for our provider community, because we know that they're not going to always be logged into FAMS and looking at their dashboard all the time. But if we do have any letter that we generate to them, it will go to, and this is not easy to read with this whole formatting here, but it's going to go to the site email as well as that FAMS account holder. They both will get an email saying that in this case, Olivia Person has been CBC approved for the provisional approval, and they could click here on this link just like with other FAMS messaging, where they can then go directly back and log into FAMS to be able to read that letter. So since this is a new letter, I'm going to actually show this to you so you can kind of see what the text and language is. But it's sent to the provider about Olivia, and it shows that we're notifying you that they're provisionally approved to work, volunteer, be present in child care because we have a fingerprint and because we have a medical. But then it also says whenever this person is with children who are in care in the program, the person has to be supervised, and that this approval is pending full completion of the other components of the CBC. So it gives them the ability to have a letter to show proof that they were provisionally approved while they're pending the rest of the completion of their 6,000 and their whole clearance packet. So now Olivia we're going to work through the happy path here and make the assumption that Olivia got provisionally approved, and now she's handed in her 6,000 packet to the provider, Lynn, and Lynn would come in here and say, okay, I'm going to fill out the rest of the information because I have her 6,000 packet information. So all of this comes from the information that either came from her fingerprint or something that comes from the 6,000 packet. So you can see, for example, her name and her date of birth and the gender, all that pulls from her fingerprint. So that's why those are grayed out. But they could put in, if she had an alias, for example, let's say Olivia, recently got married and her last name used to be, Rodriguez. Rodriguez. She could save that, and that will show up as being an alias name. That information will also pull into CCS2, that you'll be able to see that, as well as the clearance unit will be able to see that when they're doing out-of-state checks. We're going to be putting in the other information we collect, and just like you're used to seeing in other places and in FAMS, if it's a required field, it typically will have that asterisk by it, and in these cases, it will have even the red highlight. Anything that doesn't have that asterisk is because it's not a required field. You'll also see things like these little help texts that will help them throughout the process if they have questions about those particular items. You might notice that if they enter their cell phone, there is this box that they could check, and it says, do you give OCFS approval to send program communication through text messages to this number? Right now, all we have the technology to do is to send email blasts, but we do hope in this coming year or so that we'll be able to also start sending text messages. So that's why we incorporated it to this release, that we could at least start asking, so that if someone did say yes, they would receive a text, that we'd be able to do that in the future. I'm going to say that they're speak English, but you could say other languages. And then we're going to enter the address that they shared on the 6,000 packet. For the mailing address, there's different functionality that they could say, yes, I have a P.O. box, it will look like this. If they say no, their mailing address is not a P.O. box, it says like this. But they also, if they said their mailing address is the same as the home address, they can just check that box. And then just like you're used to seeing in CCS2, if they say yes, they have the 6,000 packet, then this shows. It tells them that the requirements for the comprehensive background checks will be completed based on the information they share, and that OCS will send written notice about the decision. And then they need to answer the question about, do you have the required information or forms needed to process this person's clearances? We're going to say yes. It puts in the date. And then when we save on the page and we display the rest, now you will see the rest of those tabs that they will collect and share with us based on the information they have in their 6,000 packet. So now we have out of state. We have the fingerprint and the role maintenance tab, the criminal conviction, staff exclusion, SCR, qualifications, references, and medical. And we're going to go through each one of them together. So the first one is the out of state. And I'm going to demo this for you as somebody who, yes, they have, but if it was no, then they simply would click no and go to the next one. And we're going to put in here an address. So let's say that they have lived in Florida. And they put in the dates that they live there, and then they save. And again, just like you saw in other places, it displays in this little table below that they could edit or delete it if they made a mistake. They can also add another address in case they lived in more than one place in the last 5 years. And then one enhancement that's different than we have right now, but it's based on feedback that we got from the clearance unit as well as other folks who were testing this, is that there has been some confusion about people who maybe right now live in a neighboring state. They still work in New York State, but they live in Pittsfield, which is, you know, neighboring to Albany here. And they weren't putting in that they lived there because they didn't think about that as being where I lived previously. But let's just say that they really did in 2023 move there, but they're still living there. We'd want to collect that because that is information that we still need to be looking at from Massachusetts crime as well when they're doing their clearances. So that takes care of the out-of-state. The next tab for fingerprints or roll maintenance, we just talked about that a little bit when we dated Colton. But in this case, I want to show you, and we're going to demo as we look to the CCS2 side of it, that Olivia not only came in with a fingerprint as an employee, but Lynn wants her to be a site supervisor. So we're going to click site supervisor, saying that they requested that as her role. And when we save on the page, you'll see that it doesn't change her role here to employee. And that's because she's requesting the role, it's not approving the role. That's something for you as a regulator to review this, make a decision, and decide whether you're going to add that as an additional role for her. The next tab is criminal conviction statement. And the point here is that Olivia would have shared her criminal conviction statement with Lynn, and Lynn is the one who's saying, I attest that the program has this conviction statement for Olivia and that she either has or has not been convicted. If they say have, we pop this, are you sure that she has been convicted of a crime? This answer, once saved, can't be changed. As you know, if they say have, then it's going to trigger on the CCS2 side that they need to have a safety assessment completed. So we really want to make sure that they're mindful about what they're answering there. So in this case, I'm going to say that Olivia does not, that she wrote on her paperwork that she did not, has never been convicted of a crime, and I uploaded the document. And all of that will be, you'll see when we go to the CCS2 side of it, will be displayed there as well. For staff exclusion, because we've already collected this information from them on their staff information tab, there's really no further action that they need to do, but we do have here that the collection of the Social Security number or alien reg number speeds the processing. So if we get to this page and they haven't shared it yet, they can click edit and be able to come in and say, all right, I do have the Social Security number, I'll share that, so that hopefully it speeds the processing of the staff exclusion list. And then the next page is the SER. And we'll talk about this more, and this page, honestly, based on some meetings we had yesterday with the online clearance system, is going to be changing slightly. So when you see this, it will be slightly different. We're going to be sharing with them a terms and conditions form, and we're going to ask them to attest that they're going to basically follow those terms and conditions that the online clearance system requires. But what we're doing is allowing them to access the online clearance system directly through FAMS. If I'm currently a daycare sex program and I access my online clearance system in a different way, they totally can keep doing that. All this is doing is just trying to ease a path for them. If I'm the person doing the clearances and I want to sit down and do all the clearances all at once, instead of asking them to enter, open another browser to find the online clearance link, that they could go directly from here. And if they're the same NY.gov account, it will take them directly from FAMS right into that. When we get to the CCS2 side, Patty's going to share some thoughts as well about that. But basically, this whole process, all we're doing here from a provider perspective is giving them the ability to be able to navigate to that online clearance system process directly from FAMS. But it's still the online clearance process, and they're still the one collecting the funds and all those sorts of things. So since Olivia wants to be a supervisor, if she didn't, all she would need to do is enter all of these information. We wouldn't need qualifications. We wouldn't need references. But since she does want to be a supervisor, we will go ahead and show you those pages and have her enter that information. The other thing is we're not going to hide this from Lynn as the provider. If she decides that I love this FAMS system and I want to start, putting in all of my employees' information, all their qualifications, and sorry to say and talk at the same time, all of her information, they certainly can do that. They can use this system as their tracking as well, but the only time we're going to require it would be at role approval. So if you, the provider, didn't come in, Lynn didn't come in and give you her qualifications, then you're not going to be able to approve her role. Just the same way that you would have right now, like if you were doing a FAMS initial application or something like that. So the next part is childcare experience. So I'm going to put that in and say that she worked at this particular facility for 10 years, and she was an assistant teacher at ABC Daycare. One little enhancement based on feedback we got is that they also can multi-select the age. They don't have to enter it 3 different times in order to get it in this table. If they worked at ABC Daycare for all this time, and some of the time they worked as infants, some toddlers, some preschool, they can do that all at once. And then they can upload any, let's say, experience documents they have about that, and they will display here as well. And since she is applying to be a supervisor, we're just going to say that she also worked as a supervisor at ABC Daycare as well at that later date. Add that, upload her documents. And again, just like you're used to with the FAMS initial application, anything that that provider enters here and saves is going to display for you to view and review within the CCUS part of it. And it will be tied to that, her role approval. So in the benefit of time, because we're running out of time, I'm not going to do a whole reference tab here, but it's similar to what you're used to on your FAMS application, that they could enter all of their references. It would show up here so that when it then is displayed in CCS2, it would be something that you could go in and approve and review. So let's go back to the staff list. And now if we look at Olivia again, it shows you that she's under review, and it shows 45 as her days outstanding, because now, since she's under review, that means that you as the regulator can do your part. If I, Lynn, want to find out what's the status of my review for clearances for Olivia, I'll be able to come here and see that it's because the regulators is doing these things still. You guys are working on the SDL, the SDR, the New York State Sex Offender, and then also we'll tell them if there's out-of-state review that needs to be completed. So hopefully that helps with that communication that currently right now where the provider wonders what the status is. They're going to be able to see in real time what still is remaining for Olivia complete. So that is the FAM side of it. Now I'm going to go to the CCFS2 side of it and what you'll be seeing from a review perspective. So let's find Olivia. Okay. She's a pending employee. And I want to show you the to-dos, first of all, for Olivia, because this is part of how you will know what's happening for her, is that you'll be able to see to-dos. So for Olivia, it shows that she had a role requested and that her CBC is under review. So that would give you that direction that since she's now under review, that means the provider or the applicant has done everything they can to give you the information, and you can do your part to make your CBC clearance decisions. So now if I go, it'll show me, obviously, and you're used to this, you do this all the time, but I'm going to show and highlight some of the things that are a little new. One would be if we go to the role page, and you'll see that now we have this new section here to the right that is going to show you if that person's ever had a role requested. If it's their employee and nothing was requested, this all will be blank. But since they requested a site supervisor, then you obviously can review that decision. And if you decided, yes, we're going to add the role of site supervisor. And if you click, yes, I reviewed this and I completed it, and save on the page, once you went back to your to-dos, those to-dos are going to look slightly different. It's going to tell you that you've made your decision for the requested role, and I'll show you that in just 1 second. And then it's also going to tell you that now there's a role approval needed for Olivia. So again, it still shows she's under review, first as, but now that to-do that says she had a role requested is gone, and a new to-do is here that shows that Olivia needs to be approved as a site supervisor role. So let's go back to her clearances. And now we're going to look at the SCR SEL page. I'm going to hold SCR for just a second and let Patty talk about that. But you'll notice that the criminal conviction tab now is grayed out. That is because you are no longer going to have to review this document, make a decision to say whether you received it or whether it's conviction disclosed. Those will be required now on those FAMS pages to be entered, and then whatever is attested to there will be displayed here. For staff exclusion, it's the same process as what you're used to doing now, where you would do your check for the staff exclusion and either approve or disapprove. For the SCRs, again, the same process. We didn't change any of these drop downs. If they're approved, you want approved. If it was sent to SCR or returned to applicant, or you're reviewing it once you've gotten something back from the SCR, you could do all of those things. Patty, do you want to step in there and share some thoughts too about the regulator role for SCR?
Sure. The regulator role is not changing much, except now it's going to include the home-based providers and daycare centers too, because the provider will go in, enter all their information into the online clearance system. It'll go to, they'll do their payment. It'll go to you just like now. You'll sign in and you'll see it on your list of submitted ones. You'll have to review it, look at it just to make sure there's something really not crazy on there, and then submit it to the SCR. The SCR will do their clearance part. It'll come back, and just like it does now, you'll have a letter waiting, which then you'll be able to approve, set to like Melissa was just showing you, the status as approved for the completion. So the letter never goes to that do or do not letter, does not go to the provider. They will not see that. The only thing they see is the results at the end. But that it's not changing. So if you're already doing daycare centers and SACs, you're already kind of used to this process. So it's just bringing the home-based into it.
Great. Thank you, Patty.
Yeah.
So this tab would be the medical statement. And this tab looks a little bit different than what you're used to seeing now, because remember, as we demoed in the very beginning when she became provisionally approved, is that Lynn attested that she had that medical form when it was signed or completed, and then she uploaded it. If Lynn was only an employee or only a volunteer, you would not even need to do anything on this page. But if for role approval, you need to review it, then you could do that and be able to approve it. If they marked it incomplete or not approved, it's going to update so that they could also make those changes again, upload another form within the FAMS side of it. So let's just go the happy path here that shows that she is approved. Qualifications, just so you see that just like what she entered in that page is now here, as well as with the documents that were uploaded. They also will be viewable for you. We didn't do references, but that's where references would be if we uploaded them. So the next part I want to show you is, well, as you know, and I'm just going to kind of go back and forth so you can kind of remind our Steves that now we know there's two things that basically are left. They're out-of-state clearances and their sex offender checks. So let's do her sex offender check and say there's no history and save. And then all we have left to do is their out-of-state check. Normally you as a regulator, all you're going to see is this page, which is grayed out for you. I stayed logged in this myself because I knew I had out-of-states that I needed to do. So I'm going to just go through here as pretending I'm the out-of-state clearance person, and that we'll make this assignment and then do her and say everything was happy path and no issues. But this is typically, and I know you wouldn't normally see this, but this is where the clearance unit does their work, that they would do all of these decisions, and that's what then gets displayed for you on your facility level page. So since this was the very last thing that needed to be done, you'll notice that as soon as the clearance unit did their part, she's now approved. So now let's go back to her at the facility level, because typically what would have happened in the past is that you would have then gone to your CBC decision tab and you would have gotten a to-do that says you need to generate the letters. Now we are auto-generating those letters. And let's just kind of look first at the provider letter. The provider letter is very similar to what you just saw, and I demoed for you for the provisional approval, that they would be able to go and you'll see that, let me find it, that I got an email that I am Lynn, and I got an email that said that Olivia now is CBC approved as the provider. And if I went back in as Lynn here and refresh my page and found Olivia again, it's going to show she's CBC approved. She now has that 5-year period to be able to get her, that she's good as long as there's no break in service. And then also Lynn will be able to look at her letter and view that letter with any of those details. And it's the provider letter they're seeing there, the one that doesn't have any crimes or those sorts of things. And if they refresh it, it reads the read. But back on the CBC side of it for CCS2, you'll see there's 2 person letters now, which is different than what you're used to seeing. You'll notice they're all system recorded because they were all system generated. But there's this one that says a person email. And I want to try to explain this to you a little bit. But if they are the approval letter or the disapproval letter, if there was any sort of criminal activity that was reported through her prints, we would have had to do a safety assessment for them. And in that safety assessment, we would have evaluated the crimes and either decided what we call no bar, that means, yes, we've evaluated it and they're still good to work in childcare, or maybe there's a restriction, or they're disapproved. If it's what we call a no bar and they're still able to work, or if there's a restriction, we still have to, by reg, in this email that we send, we have to provide a list of those crimes and what our outcome of the review of those crimes were. Well, we don't want to send that sort of email out in the email world, or maybe somebody could hack that and view that and misuse it against this person. So what we're doing is actually emailing them a condensed version of that letter that doesn't have any of the crimes. So this example went to Gmail. That's because that's what I set up as being Olivia's bogus email. She's going to get this letter that basically says that she's approved. If she was approved for multiple sites, it would show those. If she was approved with a restriction, it would have that restriction here. And then it has the standard language about that there's 5 years, as long as no break of service. But it also has this additional information that says, if you'd like to review the details of the information OCBS received through your fingerprint, click on the link below, create a new NY.gov account, and log in to see that letter. So I'm going to show you that process. If I click on that, it's going to open NY.gov, where I could create a new one, or I could say, no, I don't have one. I'm going to say, yes, I do have one, and I'm going to put in one of my accounts I have as a test account. Confirm my name. It's going to then open up FAMS for me. Now, this is not something that normally you guys would be able to do, but I'm doing this in a test environment because I want to be able to show you what this person would be seeing. So you'll see that for this user ID, Melissa 2, and I called myself at that time employee 3, even though I'm associated with that facility, I don't see any facility information. There's no tie where I can see, just because I created an account, any of the other information about the license or the program or other employees' CBC information. I just created my own dashboard that I could see my own information. And the way I would see my letters would be I'd go to my CBC letters, and then I would see that letter displayed here. And if this was a letter that had all the crimes, which it's not because we're doing this as a test, it would have had crimes there listed as well. So that basically is helping the person to get that letter. Now, if they never go to that effort of, they get the letter and they have that link and they never go to this effort to create MI.gov account and see their own personal FAMS dashboard, that is fine. That's totally their decision. There's no pressure to do that. I think we all probably think that the vast majority of the people won't go to that effort. But if I am someone maybe who has a restriction on there, or I got disapproved, then I would go to that extra effort of trying to probably create an account where I could view that letter. And then one other thing about that that has to do with letters, and that is that all of these will auto-generate except for the disapproval letter or what we call the rescind letter. Disapproval, I think you all know, is something that right now, if there's someone's being disapproved, that letter has to be generated by the clearance unit manager, and that person is the one who generates it. Once it gets generated, we're still going to send these person emails and person letter that they can post and do their account creation. They don't have to mail a hard copy of those just because it's a disapproval. And we still will post to the provider that there's a disapproval letter. And we'll send that email that notifies them that there's been a disapproval for that person, and it will post it on the portal. And then the other letter is this rescind letter. And that's what we call our oops letter, that if you, for some reason maybe, and this happens typically when it's disapproved, that maybe you clicked on, that they had history for sex offender instead of they didn't. That's when you would reach out to the clearance unit, to Desiree, and she'll go in and generate that rescind letter. That is something that happens manually. But all the rest of the letters that right now you've had to generate, approvals, incomplete, expired, all those things will be auto-generated for you now. So I think that I've gone through everything that we needed to cover, and we have about 5 minutes left. I'm going to pass it back, I think, to either Jim or to Patty for some closing comments.
I just wanted to say one thing, judging from some of the questions, I think what regulators need to remember is that basically the provider's inputting the information. It's going to go to the regulator. The regulator still needs to review it. And if you have concerns about the legitimacy or things that are going on, then it's still going, you're still doing the approval. They're doing the data entry basically. So, I mean, you have to kind of start getting in that frame of mind, but that's what I just wanted to lay out there.
And if I could also jump in, good afternoon, everyone. This is Jim Hart. Hopefully you're liking what you've heard so far today. And apologies for not being able to be on the front end of this. I had challenges getting in with my my password. So glad that I was able to join. We are really excited about the transformation of this process and moving it from what we've been doing for the past couple of years from a paper format to a more automated format. As Patty said, and as Melissa did her demo, we really just wanted to take what was being done in paper and move this into the system to the best extent that we can. We do think it's going to help streamline the process and make it more transparent for both the regulators and the providers as they're going through the process, and they can see more of the details of kind of what is going on with the clearances as they're being processed. One of the things that we've heard over the past couple of years from licensing and registration staff is the challenges that they've had, that you've had, managing the CBC caseloads. And we are really optimistic and really hopeful that this is going to provide a much greater level of support to you all in doing so and eliminate some of the more manual pieces that have been the process to date. So, we are really excited about this, going live in the next couple weeks. One thing I do want to comment is that initial applications for licensing and registration will not be able to use this initially. We are going to be a couple months out from being able to flip the switch to allow initial applicants to be able to submit through FAMS. So people that are applying for a license when we go live are going to have to continue to use the 6,000 packet process. Again, we are just a couple months out from making it more broadly accessible to both applicants and currently licensed and registered programs, but we are not there for day one, and we did not want to delay any further. So I wanted to highlight that. And I just also wanted to highlight that we are producing a lot of resource materials, quick reference guides, demonstration videos that will be available both on our website and in FAMS. So people in FAMS, if they have a question, are going to be able to see this information. There'll be the information on our website. And also want to highlight that our partners at Nice Tech are going to continue to do, web-based training sessions, so we can provide additional support as we go forward to both providers and a regulator community. We have a mailbox that's going to be managed in home office if there's questions and support needed. So we really have tried to provide a high level of support and resources available when we go live with this, just because it's much different from what we have been doing since we implemented the CCDBG background checks in 2019. So with that, I just wanted to thank you for taking the time to participate today. We know, you're going to most likely be the ones getting the first line of questions from providers as we, once we go live with this. So hopefully, we can provide additional resources to you all as well so that you can provide the support to them that's needed. We are here to, support you in doing your work. So if there's additional things that are needed, please, make sure that gets escalated up to home office. But we will be doing additional sessions going forward. We didn't want you to think that this is it. You got to take everything that we covered today and remember it all, and then try to use this in your day-to-day work. So we will be offering other resources and support as well. So with that, I will stop. And unless anybody else has anything to add, I think we are done with our session for today and appreciate your participation. And not hearing anything, I think we will bring an ending to today's session. Thank you all for joining us.